we're all trying to build our stack. But is that all there is? Whoever dies with the most toys wins? I mean, on today's show, we'll talk to a man who's been financially independent for 10 years and is still grappling with these questions. He's the host of the School of Financial Freedom podcast, Douglas Tsoi.
Let's dive into this idea, into the idea of feelings, because I think too many people treat financial independence like it's just a math problem, Douglas. And I know that from the back and forth you and I had, even setting up this interview, that you feel similarly. I want to read everybody something that you wrote me. Financial independence is an opportunity to look at our deeper selves. Carl Jung said that unless we bring the unconscious to consciousness, it will rule our lives and we'll call it fate. Tell me what you meant when you wrote that to me.
I think there are two issues in America. Number one, not a lot of people know about personal finance, and it's not their fault, right? Like, we were not taught this in school. Most of us are operating without any education on this. But then there's a second thing, which is number two, even when we know what we have to do, are we willing to do it? And that becomes super hard too, right? Because all of a sudden we hit all those beliefs that we have that we're not really conscious of what money is. Until we bring those unconscious beliefs to light, we can't really do anything about our money.
What are some of those beliefs that you see time and again with students of yours that we need to bring to light, that we need to shine a flashlight on?
Feelings drive behavior, right? And so much of our feelings are about like who we think we are or who we need to be accepted. So I have a friend who, she just appeared on my podcast, actually. She was talking about, she's having her first kid and she's trying to calculate how much money she's going to need for to raise this kid and maybe future kids, and how much will daycare cost, or like how much will if they have to go to private school or save for college and all these things. And then she's a doctor serving low income families, and she realized if you talk to Somali families or like Mexican families, any immigrant families, they're not paying attention to this at all, right? Like, every kid is a blessing, and they're like having 5 to 7 kids, right? The finances don't matter, because the point of life is to have the kids.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And so she realizes, like, what is enough to raise a kid is not even a question for these low income immigrants. Right. And so what we think is like, I don't know about you, but when I was a kid, everyone shared a room with their siblings. And now it's like a human rights violation if your kid has to share a room. Right.
I don't want my brother or my sister with me. Are you kidding me? I can't do that.
Right. So the rising expectations of America, like, is a blessing, and we cannot see how fortunate we are.
It's funny because what you're doing then is you're going through and you're questioning all the assumptions I think we make, Douglas, in our everyday existence.
And I think part of it is life is moving so fast, and we don't have a strong sense of our own history. It becomes easy to say, well, our neighbors or the people we see on the internet have this, and so like I should have this too. And no one would say that out loud, but it's unbidden, right? And that's the unconsciousness of it. Like, we believe the marketing we see all around us.
Yeah, I feel like social media just makes it even worse.
Social media is functionally mostly marketing of some sort. The most important thing about marketing, in order for someone to convince you to buy something, they have to let you know that you're not enough. And there's a tremendous amount of energy and human talent that goes around telling people that you're not enough.
It is funny. I feel like that's part of the financial independence journey, right? Like, I'm not enough because I'm not financially independent yet. Like, there's this drive. I was listening to somebody, Zig Ziglar, actually, you know the old motivational speaker, Zig Ziglar.
Yeah.
People who don't know Zig Ziglar, go look this guy up. He died several years ago, but he always has these phrases. But one that is really good, Douglas, was it isn't the attainment of the goal that truly brings you joy. What brings you joy is the pursuit of the goal, just setting up the goal and having the joy that every day I get to wake up and pursue it. I think even maybe that reinterprets your vision, because instead of it being, I'm not enough, so I got to have this thing, now you're in a place of gratitude. Now I get to wake up every day and I just get to pursue it. Like, how badass is that? It kind of changes your mindset.
Yeah, I think, I talk about financial freedom as, it's not only the math of it, right? But the path towards your financial independence is personal growth and empowerment itself, right? You feel so much more empowered about yourself when you're in control of your money and in control of your life.
Let's walk through this, because my next obvious question should be, well, where do I start? If I'm on this path to shine the light on into the consciousness around not just financial independence, but what it means to me, you have 5 stages that you walk through with your students. Can we walk through those and what they are?
I talk about these 5 stages of post financial independence. The first stage I talk about is denial. There's so many people that, like, they'll say, like, they'll hit the number. And the classic number for a financial independence movement is 25x, with X being the amount of money that you spend per year.
So the amount of money I spend right now, I multiply it by 25. I got
Yeah,
that much money in the bank or at Fidelity or wherever the hell it is. Bam, that's your number.
right. And that means you're, quote, financially independent. And, I know a number of people who have hit that number, but they don't want to leave their jobs. They don't actually want to stop working. And the super interesting thing is, we think about our jobs as things that we do for money, but our jobs give us so many other things. It gives us a sense of purpose. It gives us a structure to our day. It gives us a sense of identity, belonging, and status. And people don't, fundamentally, without knowing, they don't really want to give that up. And so they continue working, even though, like, the majority of people I know are incredibly stressed. Like, not like, oh, I'm stressed every once in a while, but chronically stressed. And that's because they've tied all these other things, purpose, identity, structure, to the fact that they have to work. And you have to do some inner work to say, okay, I can get these things outside of this really stressful job. Phase number 2 of this 5-stage process that I think of is what I call the party phase. Like, you realize you're financially independent, and then you start, like, imagining all the fun things you'll do, right? Like, I have some students that have already hit financial independence, and they moved to Spain. Um, and they live this great life in Spain where they, you know, go out and go to the beach in the mornings, and they golf in the afternoon, and they've picked up new hobbies, like they started writing novels. And there's a performative aspect to it, right? Like, you're sharing with everyone on Facebook all the cool things you're doing. You're going on vacations with, like, your loved ones and your friends, and you want everyone to know you're partying. I mean, everyone I know that's done financial independence has gone through that phase, but at some point, like, you can only party for so long, right? Phase 3 is this, what I call the identity phase, or the purpose phase, where you, like, like, I'm going to, like, do the thing that I'm really supposed to do. And, like, for a lot of people in financial independence, they start a podcast, or they start writing, or they start teaching, right? All this stuff. And it's super empowering, right? Because then you can claim this, all the benefits of, like, all the hard work you did for the decades before. And you get to see yourself as this thing and help other people. And it's really wonderful to, like, be in service to others.
You took the renewal side of it. I actually took the front edge of that, which was the is this it phase. Because I think the front end edge of what you're talking about is you wake up one day in party phase and go, is this it? Is this truly all there is? And there's this pit that client after client told me they went through of, wait a minute, there's got to be more. And then, to your point, then this fulfilling role of becoming teacher, of becoming master instead of grasshopper, starts to bloom. And really, it sounds like, to your point, there's this blooming.
I actually, in my notes, stage 4 is called "Is This It?"
Oh, that's
But
funny.
yeah, so and all of this is iterative, right? Like,
Sure.
we think of it as, like, 5 steps, and you go, but, like, these things go in cycles. So
Yeah.
nothing's, like, fully as clear cut as we're making it out to be.
But I think that the danger in that phase 3, going back to the beginning of our conversation, I love what you said about enough. If you're in this third phase of I'm teaching other people, and you're doing it because you don't think you're enough,
Exactly.
the problem's
You're
going to
still
keep coming.
buttressing your ego,
Yeah, it's
right?
still
Like,
going
you,
to
you
come.
still want to be seen as something, as successful,
Yeah.
right? And now financial independence, or becoming, a writer or whatever, is the way you want to be seen as successful.
Well, what happens in this fourth stage of doubt?
Yeah, this fourth stage of doubt, which I call "Is this it?" Doc G calls dysphoria, and there's this depression of like, who am I really? Like I have all these things, and somehow it's still not satisfying. I'll just tell a quick example of one of my clients. He grew up in India, rural village India, poor, and somehow, for some reason, he had a dream that one day he was going to go to America and start a company and become rich. And when he went to America in his teens, he told me that when he was on the airplane and he went to the bathroom, he literally did not know what toilet paper was.
Wow.
And somehow he went to Silicon Valley, started up a company, sold it, had an exit event, and is worth some X millions of dollars. I don't know how much, right? And he has everything he ever wanted as a kid. And like, you hear these stories of people in Hollywood or anyone who's become rich. Like you hit a point where it's like, oh, like I've done everything I thought I ever wanted as a kid. And maybe that's the key phrase, as a kid, right? Like developmentally, we've achieved the things that we wanted when we were mature. And then we ask ourselves, what next? What happens when I've achieved everything that I've ever wanted and it's still not making me happy?
Well, and I love the second half of that you dropped there, which is the immaturity of those goals. Like I wanted those when I was a kid. And to your point, I think we change. Like we're this ever evolving being. And just because I achieve what I used to want doesn't define me today. I'm at a different point than I was then. I mean, at one point I wanted to be either a firefighter, the president, or the milkman,
Amazing.
one of the three.
Well, I mean, to go back to Carl Jung, who you mentioned in the very beginning, Carl Jung popularized this idea that we have two halves of our lives. The first half of our lives, we build ourselves up. We achieve things, we create things around us, we build security, and then not everyone does this, but developmentally, if we get to the stage, he called it the night sea journey, this journey through darkness, which I think is basically the stage 4 of depression. And most of us want to avoid the depression. And Carl Jung says, no, we have to move into it, right? And that's what happens in stage 5. A lot of people, like I know this other entrepreneur in Silicon Valley who made a couple $100 million in a startup age 30, and he buys his house in Maui and he thinks, I'm set for life. I live in Maui in this $10 million house. And when the dysphoria sets in, because he's sitting there doing nothing on Maui all alone, he goes back to Silicon Valley. And I think that's the danger of stage 5. Like you can just go back to doing stuff. But the second half journey, and maybe it was just too early for him because he was 30 years old. Second half journey is you realize I spent all my life doing, and I haven't figured out who I am if I'm not doing anything.
Which I think then is the ultimate acceptance, right? That I'm okay just being. Instead of doing, I'm being, which is a hard place to be. And also it reminds me of, my co-host OG, his one of his favorite phrases, the only way is through. Like when you feel this stuff, instead of trying to avoid it, shut it down, the only true way to get there is through.
Money only solves money problems, which is surface level. But underneath even our money problems are this undercurrent of discontent, right? Like not enoughness. And I believe our not enoughness, whether it's overconsumption or overwork, or just ways of distracting ourselves. Like we don't want to actually understand our not enoughness that comes from inside. And I think the real prize of financial independence, and then financial independence is not the only way to get there, is creating enough time to actually see it and walk with it.